Hey there. So, my next guest, I absolutely loved having this conversation because she's an English professor, an adjunct English professor, and we actually have a discussion about literature. And I don't generally get to talk to people about books and make literary references. So, this one was definitely a little more highbrow, but I had a ton of fun, and I know you all are going to enjoy it. Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the Gamerpreneur podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Bradford Carlton. Today, we have a very special guest with us. We have Dee Comstock. Hey there, Dee. How's it going?
Hello, it's going all right. How are you doing today?
Oh, it's a beautiful sunny day in Las Vegas. How about yourself?
Doing all right. We've got some nice fall weather in the Carolinas today.
It never gets, does it actually get fall down in the Carolinas? I thought it was like summer all year round.
So we do get some fall weather. So the leaves are changing color. We have some nice 50, 60 degree weather, which is fall for us. So
That's kind of cold. Like we're here in Vegas. It's in the upper 80s, and that's fall for us. All right, so Dee, I like getting the show started, just getting right into it. So could you just begin by telling us a little bit about yourself, please?
Absolutely. So my name is Dee. I have a master's degree in English literature. We're actually applying to go get my PhD soon. I teach at a local technical college, intro to English and grammar, as well as like a small supplementary class that helps with that for new students that are coming into college for the first time. So it's been interesting getting to teach online with the pandemic going on. And I am a member of the stream team for the Athena Alliance.
Wonderful. All right. Now, before we kind of get into the gaming and what you do for a living and all that, I ask everybody a single question when I start these interviews. I'm going to ask you, just like I ask everybody else, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being high, how weird are you, Dee?
I'm going to go for a 7.
And why is that?
Okay. So 1 is that I get very obsessed with fandoms very easily, whether it's video games, anime, books, whatever. And I will go digging through the lore and I will come back up like, okay, I know all of these obscure facts about this different lore of video games, anime, books, what have you. And the other thing is I'm actually a practicing witch.
Okay, right on. Okay, so the first part, what you do is you're that person who's like, the book's better than this movie.
Depends on the adaptation. Sometimes they do a decent job. I'm like, okay, that was good. Kind of on par. But most of the time, yes.
Okay. And how does one become a practicing witch?
So it's a religion as well as a practice. So where some people are practicing Christians, I am a practicing witch and have been since I was 16.
Okay.
So for a little over a decade.
Right on. Okay, so let's get to the gamerpreneur part. So the gamer part, can you tell me when you first started playing video games? What's your gamer cred?
So I started when I was 5. I was my parents' first kid. And so my earliest memories are actually sitting on my dad's lap while he played Doom or Phantasmagoria on the desktop. And so I got to help him like hit the trigger on the joystick and everything. And then I got to play on a Super Nintendo and a Nintendo 64. So those were my first gaming systems.
Wonderful.
Those were all family systems. And then whenever I was 7, I got my first PlayStation for myself in my room. And that was kind of hilarious because my dad did not realize you needed a memory card because everything else had saved like in the cartridge at that point. So I had for 2 weeks a PlayStation that I could not save on. So I had to keep replaying the same parts of the game over and over and over again.
And you're like, Dad, you don't understand. It's not saving.
Oh, yeah. He was just like, we're going to have to wait until this next payday to get you a memory card. And I was like, okay, I really need it. I keep getting to this point. And what stunk as well was if I died, it would take me back to the very beginning because it wasn't like no saving, no checkpoints, no autosave. So it was just immediately back to the very beginning of the game. And so it was very much like people say, you know, those unskippable cutscenes that you like know by heart if you died several times. It was like that with the beginning of these games with their openings. And I could like recite it by heart.
I feel you. The Legend of Zelda 2 back on the NES, Adventures of Link. I own a cart and one of the gold carts, right? And the internal battery died when I had gotten it. And so there was no saving that game. I know how it goes.
Yeah, I've been there. It stinks.
All right. So you got your PlayStation. How'd that continue up to today?
So with my family, I had a little brother that was 5 years younger than me. He ended up, his first gaming console was a GameCube, and I played on that as well. We had a family Xbox. Then we got the Xbox 360 and a PlayStation 2. And it took me a little while to get the PlayStation 3 until I came to college, just because I had too much going on with high school and with everything else. So I still played on my PlayStation 2. I still have my PlayStation 2. Played on the PlayStation 3. Now I have a PlayStation 4. We decided to get that, me and my boyfriend, instead of getting the Xbox One, because there were so many PlayStation exclusives compared to the Xbox. We're like, if we're going to get one, we're sticking with Sony.
Absolutely. Well, just wait until the next generation, right?
Oh, now it's becoming an actual debate. Last time it was easy. This time it's like, so here's the pros and cons list.
Right. Okay. So what do you play now then?
So I love playing like RPGs. I am big into Dragon Age, Mass Effect, the Sinking City, which is a Call of Cthulhu like survival horror game. I am playing some more indie games on desktop because I've actually helped out with Potions and Pixels here in the Charlotte area. They have an indie game club every week. And so you get to play a few games, like anywhere from 2 to 4 games. And then we have like a panel that discusses the different indie games that we've played.
Wonderful. Okay. Now you've been playing for a few years. You've had the gamut of different systems and different games. If you had to choose one as your all-time favorite, which one is it?
That's really hard. It's honestly tied between the Dragon Age series and the Mass Effect series by BioWare. They do such a great time storytelling, and they have so much lore and so much you can figure out if you go through the entire game. So
100%. I honestly think Mass Effect 3 is probably one of the best games I've ever played. Like right at the beginning, you get that emotional kick, right? Right at the beginning.
Yeah. Absolutely. And like I got the trilogy on PlayStation 3 when I finally got my PS3. I bought the trilogy and all the DLC for like all the games. And I was playing it. My roommate in college could not play video games. Her depth perception's a little off, so she can never actually play them, but she loved watching them. So she had me play through the entire games with her a few times so she could end up seeing everything there was to see in the games. And
those are
I don't
big
get tired
games.
of
Those
it.
take a long time.
They do, and I love them. I can play them over and over and over again. I still can't do any of the Renegade options, though. If I have the choice to be good and actually save everybody, I try to.
I did try the Renegade options, and like the game just doesn't turn out the same. Like it's horrible.
It breaks my heart.
All right. So that's the gamer part. Let's talk the preneur part. So you say you're a teacher. Like, can you kind of go into that, please?
Yeah, so I am a college adjunct professor, which basically
And what does that mean?
Yep, I am a part-time professor. So I am basically a contracted teacher that comes in to teach anywhere from 2 to 4 classes every semester. So I don't get full-time hours and I don't have the full-time benefits, but that's because I just have a master's degree and I'm just getting into teaching. I absolutely love it. I've taught one literature course, but I mainly teach how to write college level papers. And they have 3 large assignments every semester.
Okay. I want to ask, like, and my gut instinct is telling me I should ask you, how did you get into that? But I actually want to ask, how terrible are these papers that you're grading?
Depends on the student. Some of them clearly paid attention in high school, like at their senior year, for how to prepare. And there's still some things to be like grown on because writing is a skill. And that's what a lot of people don't realize is that you have to train your writing skills just like you have to train everything else. Some people are just inherently better at some skills at first than others, but that doesn't mean you're not going to be as good as they are. It just takes practice. But some of them are really bad because they don't listen to the prompt or the formatting. I've gotten a wall of text 2 or 3 times. Like there's no indents, there's no paragraph splits, just a wall of text. I'm just like, I went over in 2 different lectures how to format this paper and gave an example of this paper. And it just, whew.
How do you deal with that? Is that like a % off? Is that automatic fail? What's
So with that, if it's a rough draft, because I force them to write rough drafts, which a lot of them hate me for, I'm sure.
Oh, I would too.
But it's a homework grade rather than contributing to your overall grade. It's a homework grade where I give you feedback on how to get a better grade. I fill out the rubric so you can see what you would have gotten on the final paper if you turned in this paper. But then you end up getting anywhere from 20 points to 10 points higher than that grade. So if you would have failed that, if that was a final, you're probably going to get a C on it, rough draft wise, and you're going to see where you can improve.
Okay, wonderful. All right, what got you into teaching?
So I'd say my mentor teacher at my alma mater, Winthrop University in the Carolinas. And oddly enough, I started as a biology major whenever I first came to college. Completely different realm, but it's all the math that got kicked me out of bio, because as soon as I got introed into organic chemistry for the required chemistry course,
Right.
and all the theoretical math, I was like, nope, I'm done. Goodbye. And I had taken a literature course that was an elective, and it was called The Literary Merits of the Lord of the Rings. They were just studying the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy in one semester.
In one semester?
Yes.
Gosh, I had a class on just Hamlet for one semester, and that was awful. I can't imagine getting all of that in one.
Yeah, we had a huge compendium. It was the entire series in one big book. And then we had a biography book that was on Tolkien's life and literary theory. And we had to sprint read, and I had to learn how to write in the margins of my books, even though I felt like I was committing sacrilege when I did that.
Yeah. I went to law school, 3 years of law school. I never wrote in my books. I understand.
They hammered it in for us English majors. They're like, you have to write in your book. I know it's going to hurt, but these are your teaching books. All the notes you put in there are going to help you teach one day if you decide to teach. I was like, I guess. I started at first just trying to put Post-it notes in it. And my professor just kind of looked at me. He's like, I can tell you love to read, but you need to write the book. And I was just like, okay. But that class reignited my love of literature and of like basically pulling it apart. Where's the foreshadowing? What theories can you apply to it? I am a literary theory buff. I love applying different types of lenses to books and novels. And so I went to the office, changed my major to English. Then my mentor professor got a hold of me when I took a class on Arthurian legends. So it was an entire class just on King Arthur and how the Arthurian legend came to be, starting back in Old English, like cave writings that they found, and going up to the modern day, like myths and legends. And I loved it. And that's my focus, is medieval literature. I focus more on medieval stories like the Old Norse sagas and Old English and Old Irish writings.
So how do you feel about Gawain and the Green Knight coming out then?
Interesting. Normally, like there's been so many adaptations of a lot of these stories. Like there was one King Arthur movie that had Keira Knightley in it. And the tagline for it was the true story that inspired the legend. And it basically just smushed together 5 different legends into one movie. And I was just like, no, the timeline doesn't make sense for half of the stuff you have going on. Okay. But I like that it's still in like popular and prevalent, because it means that people are still interested in medieval literature and that they're wanting to study it and see what it's all about.
Absolutely. So how hard was it to actually learn Old English then? Because I had one class on the Dark Ages literature, and our professor, that was it. It was all Old English. I had like no clue what you're saying, man.
So I'll actually be taking an Old English class when I go for my PhD. All the ones that we took for my bachelor's and my master's were in translation. But my mentor teacher, she can speak Old English and Old Norse. And so she actually read Beowulf in Old English for us. And the cadence is completely different. If you've never heard anybody read The Arrival of Grendel in Old English, it is eerie. Like the cadence sounds like the beats of a monster coming up to you to like tear you apart. Like it's ominous. And I'm just like, that's so cool.
All right. So kind of just diving a little more into like your profession here. My wife's not here to kick me, but I'm going to ask anyway. So I have a habit of putting my foot in my mouth and like just asking stupid questions. But so I know people who are still in college. I'm many years removed from actually still being in college, but I know people still. And when it comes to English, they tell me that all they need is Grammarly. How do you parse through the students who are using these tools that basically do it for them and the people who are actually trying?
So they help. Grammarly does help, but unless you're willing to pay for the subscription, that is a hefty chunk of change for the higher subscription, it's going to fall through the cracks, and it's only so smart. It's smarter than a word spell and grammar checker, but it's not so smart that if you know the rules of how to use commas, semicolons, passive versus active voice, it's not going to end up doing that for you unless you're paying for it. Okay. And a lot of students do it because it's free. So not many of my students have tried to pay for Grammarly. So I'll go back to their papers and they're like, I used Grammarly. I'm like, the free version? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, it's not going to work. It's the same kind of thing that when students try and use these citation generators, the ones that like make the works cited page for you. Mm-hmm. But MLA format changes so often that they don't have all the citations for all the different things in those citation generators. So when we get to our research paper, I'm like, and I'm going to tell you this. And they'll just kind of stare at me. I'm like, don't use a citation generator. I will know if you use one. And they're like, how? I'm like, because it'll get it wrong. Just by a little bit. Just by a little bit, but wrong enough that I'll notice.
Sure. Okay. So part of the purpose of my show is to show people that there are, careers or businesses that they can get into by showcasing my guests. And here we have an adjunct professor. How would somebody follow in your footsteps if they want to get into teaching?
So there's a few different ways, because there are some programs at different universities that have a 5-year MA track. And that's if you want to end up normally teaching at a lower level rather than a college level. And for some people that works. Some people really want to teach high school kids, and then you can have a 5-year master's degree and bachelor's degree in just 5 years. Some programs do it that way. I went back to school for my master's, so I have a separate bachelor's and master's degree. To become an adjunct, you just need to be a master's in your field. So history, math, English, science, and apply to a technical school. So you have to have a curriculum vitae or a CV, which lists out everything that you've accomplished. So what classes are relevant to what you're going to be doing? Have you tutored students before? Because tutoring is it's one-on-one teaching. That's all that really is. And a lot of people don't view it that way. So tutoring, what classes you've taken that will translate well to being taught, and a good statement of purpose or a good personal statement.
Wonderful. Now, let me ask about you more personally. What skills do you have that make you good at your job?
So I write a lot and read a lot. I can see my bookshelves like right past the computer and they're over full. I need 2 or 3 more bookshelves because they're stacked 2 or 3 books in. So I study craft when it comes to literature, writing, grammar. I'm also really patient. And I think that's because I have a younger brother that's 5 years younger than me that I helped raise. And so I get a lot of really weird questions from my students. And I'm just like, yeah, I've had weirder questions from my younger brother. This is no big deal.
All right. What do you wish you had known when you were first starting out?
I wish I had known that me and organic chemistry were not going to get along that well. Because
that's usually the stumbling block for most people, like right there.
Oh, yeah. And I passed the lab for organic chem with flying colors. I'm great with practical stuff. But when it came to all that theoretical math in the lecture, I was like, why don't you just send me to the lab and I'll go get you the actual yield for these things. And we can just forget the theoretical math. It'll be fine. I'm not going to need it.
Well, that's the point. You should be able to do it on paper so you don't have to do it in the lab.
But I'd rather do it in the lab. So I'd rather have been able to tell myself that. But even then, I don't think until I got to Dr. Koster's class that I would have realized I wanted to teach. But that, and just to be more patient with myself, because people expect us to know what we want to do with our lives when we're 18 years old, which I feel is very impractical. It's like, oh, you're leaving high school. Now time to pick the path for your entire life. You're not even a quarter of the way done yet, but let's figure it out right now. It's like, are you sure? So again, I started as a bio major, changed to English, and now I'm working on PhD applications to go and get my doctorate.
Very fun. Hopefully it's not near as bad as a law degree is.
It's not.
Less reading, honestly, or more reading than I had to do. I had roughly 300 pages a night for 3 years.
Yeah. Master's degree, I had to read a full-length novel a week, but depending on the novel, that wasn't too terrible.
Sure. Okay. So I look at most things from a business perspective, because I went to law school, I did business law, I became a business coach, I've been consulting, and it's incredible the amount of writing that goes into business. There's
Yes.
copywriting, there's sales writing, there's honestly storytelling and story development, because that's mostly what sales is.
Mhm.
What are like the most important things that someone needs to know about writing and story development?
So with that, grammar, of course, is always going to be something that you need to know a little bit. You do have editors that are going to be able to pick apart smaller issues. But if you have 3 sentences jammed together where they can't even tell what your thoughts were, editing that is not going to be something they're able to do. They're going to have to come back to you and be like, I have no clue what this paragraph even says, because it's meant to be 7 sentences, but you have 2 and everything's just jammed together. And I've seen papers like that. It's terrifying. But keeping details consistent as well. So with larger things that I've written, because I've written 20-page papers for my own like master's degree and for conferences that I presented at. And I've kept notes like detailing what points I've already hit, so I don't have to keep scrolling back and like rereading what I've written, which can upset the flow of your writing. So I just kept a note card with like small bullet points, like, okay, I've covered this, 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 and this, and I still have point like C and D to make. Okay. So that way I don't continually go back.
Sure. It's actually funny you mentioned unpacking your sentences, because I actually just wrote a chapter for a book, for somebody else's book, and their editor just gave me back everything. And I guess over the years, I went from having like those just giant paragraphs, right? I was that kid in high school, like I can figure out a way to write this entire paper in 1 sentence using semicolons.
Oh no.
And my teacher's like, technically this was correct, but yeah, I can't. But I eventually turned into more like the journalistic writing, which is like 1 or 2 sentences before you start a new paragraph. And this editor tore me apart. So is there a right way to write?
It depends on the field you're writing in. I know that doesn't really help a lot, but for English writing, they're going to want more detail. For business, it's going to depend on what you're doing. Because yeah, if you're writing a sales pitch, you're probably going to want a bit more detail to know how that's going to work. Like, okay, here's the sales idea. So how's that going to work for us? They're going to want that detail of, and this is why this is going to work, and this is the proof to back it up. But then if you have like a biology report, or if you have something that's just bringing out the statistics, they're going to want bare bones, no opinion, like these are the facts, this is it.
It hurts me to think about how I used to have to write like that as an attorney. Just here's, okay, so Dee, let's talk about you a little bit more personally, if we can, if you're all right with that.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
I would like to know, you see, I believe that we learn the most in life from our failures. You know, when you get smacked in the face because everything just went wrong, you get knocked down, you have to figure out how to pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and then learn, how to avoid it again to move forward. So I'd like to know, what do you consider your biggest failure in life, and what did you learn from it?
Okay. Biggest failure in life. That one's difficult because I've had a lot of interesting failures that have like scattered through my life. But I think my biggest failure was when I considered a failure for a very long time, but I don't much anymore, just because of a change of perspective. And it was when I just graduated with my bachelor's degree. I went to go work at a sales firm until I could save up money to go back to school. And it was a company called Red Ventures that's here in the Carolinas. And they do sales for like DirecTV, AT&T, stuff like that. It's just incoming sales stuff. And it was a company that would like lure you in with the pay and the benefits. And it was a soul sucking company. And I hate saying that because the people that I worked with were great, but the company itself was just unending. It made my anxiety so much worse when it came to anything to do with phone calls, when it came to do with anything to do with just sitting at a computer. And that sucked because I loved to write. And so when I got home, I didn't want to be on the laptop writing. I wanted to avoid my electronics like the plague because I was done with them for the day. I ended up getting fired from that firm because they stopped letting you bring yourself into the sales call. Like they wanted you to read absolutely everything verbatim off of the screen, where they used to want you to bring in your personality to help like put people at ease and help them figure out what works best for them. And it didn't work out. So I got fired and I had no clue what I was doing. And I had student loans to pay. And I had to go back home to my apartment that day, knowing that I didn't have a job, that, yeah, I had some money put away for savings, but that was going to get eaten up so quick with student loan payments. And I was utterly terrified of what in the world I was going to do from that point. But from that, it actually kicked me into gear to take the GRE and be like, you know what? Fine, I'll get a part-time job for right now, just enough to end up continuing to fill my bank account with the bills I need to pay. Rely on that saved up money to pay off my student loans, but still make enough money to pay my actual bills so it won't eat into my savings nearly as quickly. And apply for my master's degree now. 1, it'll put my loans into deferment. And 2, I plan on going back at some point anyway. So I guess now's the time to do it.
Hey, look at that. Silver lining.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
I was terrified for like 2 weeks though, because I still wasn't able to find a part-time job for a while. So anxiety was like up to my eyeballs, but
you pulled through.
I did. And it was hard and it was tough, but I did.
All right. Now, kind of more positive, I guess. What is something that you're working to improve on in yourself today?
Negative self-talk, oddly enough, because I'm just like, no, maybe I shouldn't go for a PhD. Only 15 people get in out of the hundreds that apply to these PhD programs each year. I'm like, the worst they can tell me is no. The absolute worst thing they can tell me is, there are some better applicants this year. Try again later. So normally I get discouraged when it comes to things like that, when it comes to the odds not really being in many people's favor. And so I'm like, no, I'm doing it. I did this before where I was like, no, maybe I shouldn't.
So you're saying that getting a PhD is like the Hunger Games. May the odds ever be in your favor.
Absolutely. Because every one of the PhD programs that I've been looking at, they only accept a max of 18 students every fall for their PhD program.
Ouch. Okay.
Yeah, the reality of that sunk in and I was like, oh, all right then. This is going to be a nightmare. But I have friends that have gotten in. I have friends that I went to my master's degree program with that got in.
For sure.
So.
And you seem like you got a good head on your shoulders. I'm sure you won't have any problems.
I try to. And I think it's from, again, helping raise my younger brother. I actually, the very beginning of my life, I spent on military bases because my dad was in the Navy. So I'm used to things being a little chaotic. And then my partner is in the United States National Guard. So military stuff gets you used to dealing with the chaos of the world because everything can change at the drop of a hat.
Absolutely. Okay, Dee, kind of a fun question to like wrap this up on a bit. What do you think is something that people misunderstand about you the first time they meet you?
Oh, goodness. There are a few things. Like I am can't tell because I'm sitting, but I am a very short woman. I am like 5'3", and I smile a lot. I like to think I'm very open and warm. A lot of people seem to think that kindness means that I am very easily like pushed over. My students have learned that's not the case because I actually had a student this semester that emailed me 3 days after the due date of a paper. It's like, hey, sorry I didn't turn in the paper. Can I get an extension? I'm like, extensions are for before the due date, not after the due date. And they're like, oh. And like they didn't email me back after that. Like there was no response. And I was just like, you weren't expecting me to tell you no, were you?
They didn't even try to overcome the objection.
They didn't, which I found actually kind of amusing. I was like, no rebuttal, no nothing, no pleading, no bargaining.
Does that work?
My students they try to bargain.
Does it work?
Depends. If something's literally been going on, especially during the pandemic, like I had one student's like, so I didn't have a chance to tell anybody because I didn't have my phone on me, but I actually went to the hospital because of flu-like symptoms that presented like COVID. And I'm like, oh yeah, you can turn it in late. That's no problem. But this is the cutoff. You can turn it in by this date and no points are taken off. Any day after that, and I get 10 points off for each day that it's late past that point.
So like how long are these papers are we talking that your students have to do?
Not that bad. Like the first paper
10 pages?
Less. So the first paper is a literacy narrative. It's basically telling the story of their own challenges and experiences with writing. And that's only 500 words for the first paper. Second paper is 750 words. Their research paper is max. I cut them off at 1,500 words.
That chapter I had to write for somebody else's book. She said the max is 1,500 words, and I'm a prolific writer. I have numerous books myself. I'm like, I don't know if I can tell a story in that many words.
I feel the same way. So someone's like, "Oh, this is the limit," and I'm like, "You mean the minimum?" They're like, "No, that's the limit," and I'm just like, "Oh."
Right.
Okay. It's like that's why I have difficulties with my own papers and writing abstracts, because I have to write abstracts for my long papers to get into conferences, and I can only send them the abstract, and that's supposed to sell the paper. And the abstract is only a paragraph summarizing all the major points of your paper. And I'm just like,
the major points.
I'm just like, great. How long of a paragraph are we talking? Like,
Right.
would it be a
That's
full
fine. How
page
many
paragraph?
sentences are we allowed?
Normally they're like, no more than 500 words. I'm like, I can kind of work with that. But like, I ended up presenting, not last fall, but I think it was 2018. I went to the Mid-East Pop Culture Conference talking about medieval literature used in video games. And the application for that, they're like, yeah, we want only 400 words of an abstract. And then if we like it, we'll ask for the rest of the paper. And I'm just like, great. I have to summarize this 12-page paper in 400 words. Like, my boyfriend kept looking at me because I was sitting at like the kitchen table, just like backspacing and retyping and backspacing and retyping. He's like, are you okay? I'm like, please don't talk to me. My brain is cooking. I can hear the sizzling.
You're sitting there like, what word can I remove from this sentence to get 4 more characters?
Exactly. And I was just like, okay, I am 3 words over. What words can I cut?
I don't really need a the here.
Yeah. And so he came over and like he put down a small bowl of ice cream next to me and quickly walked away. So
Oh, Dee, this is fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on. How do people find you or reach out to you if they want to?
So they can actually find me on Twitch under ScarletAeon. So Twitch is one of them. I actually content create with the Athena Alliance because I do stream. I'm available on Twitter under ScarletD14. And that's honestly the 2 places you can actually find me, because I don't use Instagram and I don't have a Facebook page for my content creation yet.
All right, wonderful. Okay, now, do you have any final thoughts or anything I didn't ask you think we still need to cover?
No, but I'm curious about how weird you think you are.
My go-to answer is about a 5. I think I'm
Okay.
middle of the road.
Right down the middle.
Even before I started doing this and asking people that, I never thought I was crazy out there. Yes, I liked anime and weird games, and I've played some stuff that I would not admit, right? I've done things that I would never admit publicly, but it doesn't.
All gamers have that.
Right? It doesn't make us weird. It just means that you're honestly pretty normal. And I see gamers as more or less just somebody with a hobby. And so like there's people who get like full body paint and go out into 10-degree snowy weather to cheer on their favorite sports team. And like, to me, that's like nuts.
That's nuts to me because I don't like the cold. So
right? Like to me, that's weird, but I'm probably weird to them. So
probably. And I do have one typical English question I have to ask you.
Yeah.
Favorite book?
My favorite book?
Yep. You have to limit it to one. You can't split it up by genre. You have to pick one.
Oh, like I'll tell you the one my mind went to first. Lord of the Flies.
Good
I could
book.
never listen to Come Sail Away by Styx without thinking of that book.
That's honestly a cool association. I wouldn't have made that one. Like, I love that song by Styx, but I've never made the connection to it with Lord of the Flies.
Yeah, next time you're listening to it, like think of Lord of the Flies, and you'll be like, I can kind of see this. The
Absolutely.
alien part, that has nothing to do with it. I'll give you that. But like,
yeah, but the beginning part of it
with your friends, and then like the whole like it's
absolutely that.
Spoiler:
I like that.
Biggie broke my heart.
Oh,
right. Like I related to him so much.
I love the book, and I just think that a lot of people misconstrue the book sometimes. They're like, this is what happens when there's no structure. I'm like, this is what happens when spoiled individuals have no structure that have never had to be responsible before.
That's right.
But thank you for having me.
Absolutely. No, thank you so much. I genuinely appreciate you coming on, Dee.
Thank you.
All right. And for everybody else, I'm going to remind you all, don't be just a gamer, be a gamerpreneur.